It is April 22nd, Earth Day 2025. I'm Derrick Shore.
Hi, Derrick Shore. I'm Tessa. Happy to join you on this day, celebrating our planet that literally sustains us, gives us life.
Yeah.
And you've been fun facting oysters.
Since
week.
I did this story. Actually, and I have an oyster shell video that I'm about to post on Instagram right now. I'm posting it on my KPRC2 Instagram page. So I can't tell you where this undisclosed location is, this mountain of oyster shells.
Okay.
And a lot of people are maybe wondering, well, how do you recycle oyster shells and why would you do that? Well, it turns out oysters, the little baby oyster larvae, they need something hard to attach to. And so if they're just floating out there in the bay, they're just,
They're done for.
They're done for.
They're goners.
They're lost. Did you know every single oyster, when it's spawning, can spawn 1 million larvae, and only about 5% of those survive, and they need to be able to attach to something. So when you're thinking recycled oyster shells, it's not like a new oyster goes in and lives in that previous oyster shell. I know.
Like a snail.
You might laugh, but people ask that question. They're like,
well, we don't know.
So oysters just go back in the shell and then they like the oyster grows and a new shell grows and a new oyster grows.
Yeah,
and all of that.
my common knowledge when it comes to the oyster is like, okay, it goes great with Tabasco sauce. You put it on a cracker, it's delicious. That's like the extent of my oyster knowledge. But Derrick comes back with this fascinating information, and he's like, did you know how many oyster spawn do you think there are? Like eggs, and we're guessing, and people are like 5 million, 1 million, you know, and yeah, you just came back with all this newfound knowledge and you're going to share it with us today. I find it fascinating. I find these creatures fascinating.
They are fascinating and delicious, right? Well, and there are issues because people, I think, maybe don't realize that oysters, one of the functions that they serve is they are actually filtering the water. And depending on where you get your oysters, I mean, in Galveston Bay, they're all different. There's a map actually at Tommy's Restaurant in Clear Lake. You can look at the wall and you can see all these different places where oysters are coming from, right? And that oyster will have a very specific taste depending on where it was harvested, right? Where it was raised and harvested. So this is, again, right in our own backyard. And Tom Tillett was like, you know what? It's kind of messed up that all of these oyster shells are just going into the trash. So back in 2011, he started working with the Galveston Bay Foundation. He became what he tells me is like accidental environmentalist.
Okay.
And he has now convinced all these other restaurant owners to throw their oyster shells in a bin. They're hauled away, so it's at no cost to the restaurants. And then those, you know, after curing for a while, they go back in the bay and they create new habitat.
That seems so smart. That seems
so
smart to recycle and keep on, especially if it aids the population of oysters, something that's naturally cleaning out our bay, our water.
We need them. We need them for sure. He also taught me a lot of things that I didn't know about oysters, which is, you know, oysters, they have a mouth and an anus.
I didn't know that.
They do. Every oyster.
I didn't.
And no brain.
Do they have eyes?
Kind of like some of the guys I've dated.
Stop.
Yeah.
Okay, do they
don't know. They don't have eyes.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if they were looking at me, peeking out at me when they opened their little shell.
They do actually have a heart, too.
Okay.
And when you disconnect the oyster from the shell, that's what actually causes the heart to stop. Anyway, I learned a lot about it. And we can save that for another day.
He is now a shell full of oyster knowledge. You open Derrick up, boop, all these oyster facts.
You know, one of the first questions I asked them too, I was like, how often do you find an oyster in these things?
Stop.
Spawning oysters do create pearls.
Okay.
How often do you find a pearl is what I meant to say.
Okay.
Hey, by the way.
I was like, every time, hopefully.
Wow, okay. Well, I knew what I meant in my own brain, but what I said was a little bit different.